The alien ship hovered in the dark space, watching the rusty human vessel in silence. Commander Vyra leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. "This is the legendary human warship," she scoffed. "It looks like it belongs in a scrapyard." Her crew chuckled, their scaled hands tapping against the control panels of the Zelari Empire's flagship. The humans were known for their stubbornness, but their technology? Weak. Outdated. Nothing compared to the Zelari fleet. The rusty human cruiser floated lifelessly, no weapons charged, no shields raised. It looked like a relic of the past. Vyra had seen planets shatter under the might of Zelari cannons. This ship would be no different. "This will be over in seconds," she muttered, raising her hand to give the attack order. Then something changed. The human ship twitched. Its dim lights flickered, a deep hum vibrating through space. The Zelari sensors blinked wildly, struggling to read the ship's sudden energy spike. "What is happening?" Vyra snapped. One of her officers hissed, their forked tongue flicking in confusion. "The human ship, it's powering up." Vyra frowned. "Impossible. It has no shields, no active defenses. It's a pile of metal, nothing more." But then, the deep hum turned into a roar. A monstrous, earth-shaking, thunderous roar that tore through space like a beast awakening from a long slumber. The rusty hull vibrated, and from its engines, a white-hot glow burst forth. The laughter on the Zelari ship died instantly. The human ship, no longer lifeless, shook violently, its thrusters igniting with terrifying force. The sound it made wasn't just noise, it was a battle cry. And for the first time in her life, Vyra felt something strange. Fear. The human vessel wasn't running. It was charging straight at them. Her eyes widened. "Raise shields. Fire. Fire now." But it was too late. The human ship roared forward, its engines burning like a newborn star, and the battlefield would never be the same again. The roar of a titan. The void of space trembled. Vyra's ears rang with the unholy roar of the human ship's engines. It wasn't just sound, it was a force, a presence, a declaration of war. She felt it in her bones, deep in the cold-blooded instincts of her kind. The Zelari flagship's alarms screamed, warning of the impossible. Energy spikes from the human vessel were off the charts. The ship they had dismissed as junk was now burning with a power that made their sensors glitch. How is this possible?" gasped one of her officers. Vyra's claws dug into the armrest of her command chair. The human ship was old, but what came out of it was not old, not weak, not broken. It was alive. Then came the next shock. It disappeared. 1 second, the human ship was there, glowing like a sun. The next, it was gone. Not destroyed. Not cloaked. It moved. Faster than their sensors could track. Vyra's mouth went dry. No ship of that size should be able to move like that. No ship from an inferior race should be able to. A massive impact shook her vessel. The Zelari bridge crew screamed as power flickered. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The metal around them groaned, straining under a force it was never built to withstand. Vyra whirled to the monitors. The human ship had rammed them. It hadn't fired a single shot. It didn't need to. With a single charge, it had hit the Zelari flagship with the force of a planetary cannon. The shields, the strongest in the fleet, were gone. A gaping hole the size of a battleship had been torn into their hull. Vyra staggered to her feet, her breathing heavy. She couldn't understand. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't tactics. This was brutality. The human ship drifted back into view, its dark metal plating glowing under the dying lights of her own vessel. It didn't look like a machine anymore. It looked like a monster. And then, it spoke. A voice, distorted but unmistakably human, came through the comms, calm and cold. You thought we were weak. Vira's blood turned to ice. The voice continued. You thought we were finished. She couldn't move. She could only stare at the human warship, feeling smaller than she ever had before. Then came the final words. Now, it's our turn. The human ship's cannons came online, glowing with an eerie blue fire. Vira's heart pounded. For the first time in Zelari history, the hunters had become the hunted. The wrath of a dying star. Vira's breath came in shallow gasps. The Zelari were hunters, conquerors, the dominant force in this sector. Yet now, she felt like prey. The human warship loomed before them, its dark, battered hull glowing from the heat of its engines. The Zelari flagship sensors, once proud and precise, were now nothing but static-filled screens, overwhelmed, blinded, broken. A cold realization coiled around Vira's chest. The humans had been hiding their true strength. Commander, we need orders. The voice came from somewhere behind her, shaking, uncertain. The Zelari never spoke like this. Vira forced herself to think. Their ship was still bigger, still had weapons, still had. A blinding flash. The first shot from the human ship tore through their defenses like paper. A beam of crackling blue energy ripped across the Zelari vessel's bow, slicing through armor that should have taken a fleet to breach. A single shot. Vira stumbled forward, gripping the edge of her chair. What kind of weapon is that? She snarled. Another impact. Louder. Closer. The ship groaned, tilting as its artificial gravity struggled to keep up with the damage. Multiple hull breaches, decks 7 through 12 are gone. Vira's claws tightened. That was a third of the ship, wiped out like nothing. They should not have this kind of firepower, an officer whispered, his voice trembling. No. They should not. The humans were resourceful, persistent, reckless, but they were not gods. And yet, they had just done the impossible. Vira's mind raced. This wasn't just advanced technology. It was desperation. The humans had been backed into a corner for far too long, and now they had become something new. Something terrifying. And she was looking at it. Commander, we have to retreat. Vira's eyes snapped toward her officer. Retreat? The Zelari never retreated. But she knew the truth. If they stayed, they would die. Her jaw clenched. Rage. Humiliation. Terror. It all burned inside her, a storm of emotions she had never felt before. Turn the ship around. Now. The order came out like poison on her tongue. The Zelari fleet had crushed empires. Now, they were running from a single human warship. As the engines flared and the ship lurched into a desperate retreat, Vira stole one last glance at the human vessel. The thing they had called weak. The thing they had mocked. And now, the thing they feared most. The hunt begins. Space itself felt smaller in the presence of the human ship. The Zelari flagship fled at full speed, its remaining thrusters burning as hot as they could. The once mighty warship, a symbol of conquest, was now a wounded animal limping away from something it didn't understand. Vira's claws dug into the armrest of her command chair, her vision blurred with disbelief. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. She gritted her teeth. The humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to run from the Zelari, not the other way around. Distance from human vessel, she demanded. 2,000 units, increasing. A tense silence filled the bridge. Vira's mind raced. If they could just put enough distance between them, they could regroup, retaliate, wipe this abomination from existence. But the humans had other plans. Commander, a voice shrieked. They're gaining on us. Vira's eyes widened. That was impossible. No ship that size should be able to move that fast. No ship from an inferior species should be able to keep up with Zelari technology. And yet, the human warship was closing the gap. Fast. How? Vira hissed. How are they keeping pace? The officer's voice trembled. They're not keeping pace, Commander, they're accelerating. The Zelari bridge fell silent. Vira turned to the monitor. The human ship was glowing. Its hull was cracked, its plating scorched, but it was alive, relentless, unstoppable. Commander, a voice whispered. They're hunting us. A chill ran down her spine. For centuries, the Zelari had hunted humanity, treating them as nothing more than stubborn pests. But now, the roles had changed. The human ship was not chasing them. It was toying with them. Letting them think they could escape. And then, the lights dimmed. The monitors flickered. The ship's systems were failing. Electromagnetic disruption detected, an officer barked. Our sensors, our engines. Vira felt her throat tighten. The humans weren't just faster. They were shutting them down. And just as she realized what was happening, the human ship vanished. Not gone. Just, somewhere else. Vira spun to her crew. Find them. But no one could. The Zelari vessel drifted, helpless, blind. Hunted. And then, the human voice returned. You never asked, what we sacrificed to get here. Vira's chest tightened. Now, you'll learn the cost of waking a sleeping giant. A shadow moved outside the viewport. The last thing Vira saw was fire. The wrath of the forgotten. Darkness swallowed the Zelari flagship. For the first time in Vira's life, her ship was powerless. No shields. No weapons. No escape. The lights on the bridge flickered like dying stars, casting eerie shadows across the panicked faces of her crew. A low hum, the same terrifying sound that had shattered her confidence before, echoed through the hull. The humans were still there. Watching. Waiting. Vira clenched her fists, her claws digging into her palm. This wasn't war. This was slaughter. A warship of the mighty Zelari Empire, the race that had crushed 100 civilizations, was helpless before a single human vessel. It didn't make sense. It shouldn't make sense. Commander. A whisper. Vira turned. Her officers looked at her with fear. They were waiting for her to decide. Fight? Flee? Surrender? No. Vira did not surrender. Reroute all power to manual weapons. But, Commander. Do it. The Zelari crew scrambled to obey, shaky hands pressing control panels as they bypassed damaged circuits. A single plasma cannon hummed to life. One last shot. Vira's heart pounded. This was it. A warrior's death. A commander's final stand. She faced the view screen, staring into the abyss. You may be strong, human, she growled. But so am I. She slammed the firing control. The plasma bolt erupted from her ship, blinding and furious. For a second, it looked like victory. Until the human ship moved. Not dodging. Not evading. It caught the shot. Vira's blood turned to ice. The plasma bolt hit the human vessel's hull, and dispersed like mist on water. The bridge fell into stunned silence. No, that's impossible. The plasma should have torn through them. Instead, the human ship absorbed it. And then, it answered. A pulse of raw energy exploded outward, slamming into the Zelari vessel with a force stronger than any weapon they had ever seen. Vira flew backward, crashing against the metal floor. The ship's walls buckled, alarms shrieked, metal twisted under an unseen pressure. This wasn't a weapon. This was a message. A cold, metallic voice rang out through the Zelari ship. You took everything from us. Vira coughed, trying to push herself up. You burned our worlds. The human ship grew larger on the screen, its dark hull like a living nightmare. You called us weak. Vira's heart slammed against her chest. This was not just a battle. This was vengeance. Now. The ship's engines burned brighter, hotter. We return the favor. A final, deafening roar filled the void as the human warship charged for the kill. Vira braced for the end. The sound of retribution. The Zelari flagship trembled like a dying beast. Vira struggled to stand, her limbs numb from the impact. Around her, the once mighty bridge of her warship was reduced to chaos, sparks raining from shattered control panels, officers groaning in pain, emergency sirens wailing in a chorus of defeat. And beyond the viewport, death approached. The human warship surged forward, its engines screaming like a star being torn apart. It was no longer just a vessel. It was retribution. Vira had led 100 battles, crushed empires, turned entire civilizations to dust. She had never feared an enemy. Until now. Commander, a voice whispered from the shadows. She turned. One of her officers, barely standing, his face burned from the last explosion, trembled as he looked at her. They won't stop. Vira knew he was right. The humans weren't here to win a battle. They were here to end one. The ship shuddered again as another wave of energy surged through its hull. The monitors flickered, and for the first time, Vira saw what lay behind the human ship. A graveyard. Hundreds of wrecked ships, broken and silent, floating in the blackness of space. All Zelari. Vira's breath caught in her throat. How? Her empire had sent fleets to crush the humans, to wipe them from the stars. But the humans hadn't just survived. They had hunted them down, one by one. Vira staggered back, the truth crashing over her like a tidal wave. This wasn't the first battle. This was the last. The Zelari had lost this war long before today. And the humans had been waiting for her to realize it. Commander, what do we do? Vira's claws trembled at her sides. For the first time in her life, she had no answer. And then. A final transmission came through. A voice, unmistakably human, calm and cold. You started this war. A beat of silence. We finish it. The human ship vanished. And Vira realized, they weren't firing a weapon. They had just activated their final trick. Commander. But she never heard the rest. Because at that moment, the human ship's engines ignited in a burst of energy so powerful, so precise, that it didn't just strike the Zelari ship. It erased it. No explosion. No debris. Just, nothing. And in the empty silence that followed, the war was over. The silence after the storm. There was no explosion. No grand finale. The Zelari flagship simply ceased to exist. Where Vira's mighty warship had once dominated the stars, now there was only silence. A void. A fragment of memory lost to the cold abyss. The human warship remained, hovering in the stillness of space. Its dark, scorched hull bore the scars of battle, yet it stood unshaken, unstoppable, victorious. Inside the warship, Captain Elias Kane exhaled slowly. It was over. He leaned against the console, his fingers tracing the edge of the worn metal. The battle had lasted minutes, but the war had lasted a lifetime. The Zelari had come for Earth long ago. They had burned cities, reduced entire colonies to ashes, and left humanity with nothing but scraps. But humans didn't die easily. They rebuilt. They adapted. They endured. And when the time came, they didn't just fight back. They hunted. Kane's eyes drifted to the view outside. The Zelari were gone. Their empire had stretched across the stars, their warships once ruled the void, and now, they were ghosts. "Captain." A voice crackled through the comms. "One of the surviving human ships. The last fleet is down. No more Zelari signatures detected." Kane closed his eyes. They had done it. They had avenged their fallen. The monsters who had once laughed at human weakness were now nothing but echoes in the dark. "Understood," Kane muttered. The bridge was quiet. No cheers, no celebrations. Just the weight of what had been lost. He reached for the control panel, staring at the faded emblem of the old Earth Alliance. A symbol of what once was. A symbol of what had been taken. And now, what had been reclaimed. The war was over. But humanity was just getting started. With a final pulse of its mighty engines, the human warship turned toward the stars. And vanished into the darkness.